Welcome to Reddit Audio Tales, where the most jaw-dropping Reddit stories come to life. Today's story is about a woman who told her husband to man up in front of their friends, only to betray him a week later. She never expected the fallout that followed. Let's dive in. He'd leave me. Not for something like that, but it happened. My name is Jessica, I'm 30 years old, and I guess this is my confession. It's been a few weeks now since it all went down, and I still can't quite believe it. I didn't mean to push him that far, but I just wanted him to get a grip. I'm just saying he didn't need to act like that. I mean, we've been through worse, right? But when I told him to man up in front of our friends, that was the moment he cracked. And I still don't get it. We were at our friend's house, all of us laughing and drinking like we always do. My husband Chad was just sitting there being quiet. He's not a big talker, but he wasn't even saying anything about the game. Normally, he'd join in on the conversation or make some sarcastic comment, but he was just sitting there, staring into his beer like he had the weight of the world on his shoulders. I guess it kind of annoyed me. I mean, we have kids, we have bills. Things are hard, sure, but I'm over here handling everything. Getting the kids to school, paying the bills, trying to make sure the house doesn't fall apart. So what's his deal? Why was he acting like such a mess? At first, I tried to be subtle. I'd throw him a few glances, like, "Come on, Chad, talk to me." But he didn't budge. It was starting to feel like I was the only one trying to make the night fun. So when it got to that point, I just said it. I don't even remember what I said before, but I just blurted out, "Man up, Chad." I think I was joking, but honestly, who am I kidding? I wasn't. I was frustrated, and I said something I shouldn't have. Everyone laughed. But Chad? He just froze. He looked at me like I just slapped him in front of everyone. It wasn't funny, at least not to him. He just stared at me for a moment, and then he looked away. It was like the whole room went silent. People were still talking, but I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. I'd seen Chad get upset before, but never like this. He didn't say anything, didn't defend himself. He just stood up and walked out. I couldn't believe it. What was that supposed to mean? He couldn't handle a joke? I had apologized a few times before for making dumb comments. I don't know, maybe I just wanted him to be a little more like the guys on TV. You know, tough, funny, strong. But that was just weird. He was acting like I'd done something unforgivable. So, I stayed there, feeling this weird tension, not knowing what the hell just happened. I honestly didn't think it was that big of a deal. We'd had our moments, like the time I spent way too much on random stuff for the house, and he didn't freak out. He just handled it. We always worked through things. So, why was this so different? But I guess that's where things went wrong. I didn't even realize how much I pushed him. How much I'd been doing it for years without thinking. I think it started with the money. I've always been kind of bad with it, but he's always been there to help fix it. I would spend, and he'd pay. Always. But lately I've noticed him getting more quiet about it. And I just didn't get it. Why wouldn't he just let it go? I know that night wasn't just about me telling him to man up in front of our friends. It was all the other stuff that built up. The constant tension over money, the way he'd get quiet when we talked about the future, or when I'd mess up again, and he'd have to clean it up. Honestly, I thought he was being dramatic. But when he walked out like that, I knew something was seriously wrong. At first, I thought he'd come back and apologize. Maybe he'd even say he was overreacting. But nope. He didn't come back that night or the next. And then when he finally did call me, all he said was, "I need some space." I honestly didn't know what to say to that. Space? Like what? I'd given him space for years. He just needed to get over it. That's how I saw it. But then, when he didn't show up for the kids' soccer game the next weekend, I knew it was bad. Chad never missed those. Never. I'm not saying I didn't feel guilty, but part of me was like, what did I even do wrong? I mean, if he couldn't handle me saying that, how is he ever going to handle anything else? I wasn't even sorry at first. I mean, I said I was, but it wasn't like I truly understood why he was so upset. I just thought it was a dumb comment. And if he didn't want to move past that, well, maybe he wasn't the man I thought he was. Looking back, I don't know. I kind of regret it now. But honestly, I still feel like I'm right. He should have been stronger about it. I mean, I was just trying to make him stand up for himself, right? But he didn't. And now I'm here, wondering where the hell he went. So yeah, maybe I pushed him too far. Maybe I was wrong. But am I really the only one to blame here? I don't know. Do you think he's overreacting? Should I even try to fix this? I'm starting to feel like this is it. And maybe I don't know how to fix it. I honestly thought he'd come back. I kept telling myself that. Like this wasn't something that could ruin a whole marriage, right? A stupid comment in front of our friends? He would get over it, and we'd move on. That's what I kept telling myself. But he didn't come back. He didn't even try to talk it through. And I know what you're probably thinking. This is my fault, right? I shouldn't have said what I said. But I couldn't wrap my head around it. It was 2 weeks later when I saw him for the first time since that night. The kids were with his sister. And I didn't have an excuse to not reach out. So I called him. I was nervous, but I had to do something. I wasn't just going to sit here and let him walk away over something dumb. When he finally answered, his voice was flat. He didn't sound angry, but he didn't sound like he cared either. "Hey," I said, trying to keep it light. "How have you been?"
"Good," he replied.
That was it. That was all I got. "So we need to talk." "About what happened," I said, my voice shaking a little. But I tried to keep it together. I didn't want to sound desperate. I didn't want him to think I was some mess begging for him back. But he didn't seem eager to talk either. "I don't think there's anything to talk about, Jessica," he said. And just hearing his voice made something cold settle in my chest. "You said what you said, and it wasn't the first time you've pushed me. You've been doing this for a while." His words hit me like a punch. I wanted to argue, to defend myself, but something in his tone stopped me. He sounded tired, like he was done. And I hated that feeling. I hated that it felt like he was giving up on us. But in a way, I understood why he felt that way. I'd been messing up for months, and I didn't even realize it. Or maybe I did, but I didn't care enough to fix it. "I didn't mean it like that," I said, my voice barely above a whisper.
"It was just a joke, Chad."
"You know how I am. I was just frustrated, that's all. I didn't mean to hurt you." But the silence on the other end was deafening. Then he sighed. "I know you didn't mean to hurt me, Jess, but that's just it. You don't realize how much you hurt me when you say things like that, when you make me feel like I'm not enough. I'm not this guy who's just going to sit around while you tear me down. And I can't keep trying to fix everything when you don't even care about the mess you're making." I froze, trying to process what he was saying. He was right in a way. I had never really understood how much I put on him. The financial mess, the emotional mess, all of it. And every time I made a mistake, I expected him to fix it. I thought it was just his job, you know. He was the husband, the provider, the protector. And I was just me. I thought I could get away with it, but he wasn't letting me get away with it anymore. He was tired of being the one to clean up my messes, and I hated that he was right. "I'm sorry," I said again, but it felt hollow. I knew the apology wasn't enough. It wasn't going to fix everything. I couldn't just say the words and expect things to go back to normal. "I don't know if I can do this anymore, Jess," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "I need more than this. I need someone who respects me, who sees what I'm doing and appreciates it, not someone who just expects me to keep fixing things while they keep breaking it all." I felt like the ground had dropped out from under me.
He was really saying it. He was really thinking about leaving.
But then I got defensive. It's like this switch flipped in my head, and I just couldn't accept it. I had to make him understand that I wasn't all bad. I wasn't this awful person he was making me out to be. I mean, we had kids, we had a life together. I couldn't just lose all of that. "You think I don't appreciate you?" I shot back, my tone sharper than I meant it to be. "You think I don't see everything you do? I'm just trying to live my life, Chad. You don't get it. I have to deal with the kids, the bills, the house, everything. And I try, okay? I try. I just mess up sometimes." He didn't answer right away. I could tell he was trying to stay calm, but I could also hear the frustration in his silence. "Messing up all the time isn't an excuse, Jess," he said after a long pause. "You don't take responsibility for your mistakes. You don't even try to change. And that's the problem." His words hit harder than any argument we'd had before.
He was right.
I didn't take responsibility. I didn't. I never did. I always found a way to blame him, or my circumstances, or the kids, or whatever. But I never looked at myself. I never thought, hey, maybe I'm the one who's messing everything up. And that hit me like a slap in the face. But instead of acknowledging it, I did what I always do. I deflected. Well, I'm not perfect, Chad, I said, trying to sound casual. But it came out defensive. Nobody's perfect. I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to understand. I can't be perfect, and neither can you. But he didn't take the bait. He didn't snap back like I thought he would. He just sighed again. And then he said the words that would stick with me forever. Maybe I'm not the one who's perfect, but I've tried, and I don't know how much longer I can try when you don't even seem to care. And that was it. That was the moment I realized he might actually be done. I didn't know what to say after that. I just stayed silent, feeling this weight settle in my chest. The silence between us was thick. And the truth was, I didn't know how to fix it. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to anymore. But as I sat there, staring at my phone, I realized something. This wasn't just about the stupid comment I made in front of our friends. This was about everything. About me. About him. About us. And maybe, just maybe, I was the one who needed to change, but I wasn't ready to admit it.
Not yet.
The days after that conversation were the worst. I kept replaying everything in my head. His words, his tone, the silence. And honestly, I felt embarrassed. Deep down, I knew I was the one at fault. I knew I was the one who had pushed him to this point. But I couldn't bring myself to say it. I wasn't ready to admit that I might have been wrong, that I might have broken everything. I thought, I'm not the bad guy here. I'm just human. He's overreacting. I tried to act like everything was fine, like nothing had changed. But it had. It was clear as day. I couldn't look at him the same way anymore. And the worst part? I didn't know how to fix it. I wasn't ready to face what was really going on. The more I thought about it, the more I realized just how much I had taken him for granted. I never saw it that way before. I didn't realize how much he had been holding everything together for me. He'd always been the one who made sure the bills got paid, that the kids had everything they needed, that we were stable. And me? I was always spending money we didn't have on stupid things, getting us into debt, and acting was all his responsibility to fix. I was reckless. And worse, I was selfish. But I couldn't own up to it. Not yet. I couldn't face that truth. Because if I did, I'd have to look at everything I'd messed up. And I wasn't ready to do that.
2 days later, he called me.
His voice was softer than I expected. Can we talk? He asked, and for the first time in a while, I heard a hint of vulnerability in his tone. I hesitated, but of course I said yes. I couldn't leave things like this. We needed to talk. I wanted to fix it, but I didn't know how. So we set up a time to meet at a coffee shop. The whole time I was getting ready, I was nervous. My stomach was a mess. I kept thinking about how I was going to apologize, what I was going to say. I practiced it over and over in my head, but it felt like nothing was going to be good enough. It was too late for apologies, right? When I met him, he looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes, and he didn't look like the man I had married. He looked worn out. He didn't greet me with the usual warmth. He didn't give me that hug I always counted on when we saw each other. Instead, he just nodded at me and took a seat across from me. I sat down, trying to be calm, but the nerves were still eating me up inside. I opened my mouth to say something, but before I could, he spoke first. Do you realize how much damage you've caused, Jessica? He asked, his voice quieter but firm. He wasn't shouting, but there was so much weight in his words. You don't see it, do you? How much I've tried to fix things. How much I've tried to make it work. But every time you say something, every time you do something without thinking, it's like you're chipping away at everything we've built. It hit me like a ton of bricks. I thought I was just having little moments of frustration, but to him, it was so much more than that. My actions, my words were damaging him, and I hadn't even noticed. I didn't mean to hurt you, I said, my voice shaky.
It was the only thing I could say.
I couldn't think of anything else. But it wasn't enough. It never was. He looked at me, his gaze sharp. You don't mean to hurt me, Jessica, but you keep doing it. You keep pushing me away, without even realizing it. You think I'm supposed to just sit back and take it, don't you? That's not how this works. Not anymore. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to say, you don't get it. I'm under pressure, too. I'm doing my best. But I knew that wasn't the truth. I wasn't doing my best. I was running away from accountability. I was being selfish. And deep down, I knew it. I never wanted to push you away, I said, my voice breaking. I just don't know what I'm doing half the time. I mess up. I know I do. But I never meant for it to get like this. I never meant to make you feel like this. He didn't respond right away, and for a moment, it felt like the whole world was holding its breath. Then he sighed, and when he finally spoke, his words were quieter, more resigned. I don't know if you get it, Jess. I don't know if you're ever going to get it. You say you're sorry, but your actions don't match your words. I don't know how many times I can keep trying to fix things if you don't even seem to care about what you're doing. It's exhausting. His words stung, but they were true. Every time I messed up, I expected him to just forgive me and move on. I never really tried to change. I never really thought about how much it was wearing on him. I don't want to lose you, Chad, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but it was the truth. For the first time, I realized how much I was about to lose if I didn't do something. I wasn't just losing my husband. I was losing everything. My family, my life, my kids, and it was all because I couldn't stop messing up. I don't know what you want from me anymore, he said, his tone cold, like he was shutting down. You're not the woman I married. I don't know who you are anymore, and I don't know if I can keep doing this. I felt a pang in my chest. Those words, they cut deep. He was done. He was done trying, and I didn't know how to bring him back. I sat there, frozen. His words echoed in my mind, each one slicing through me. I don't know who you are anymore. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. My heart raced, but I couldn't think straight. I was drowning in my own mistakes, and I didn't know how to swim back. I opened my mouth, wanting to say something, but the words just wouldn't come. I tried to reach for him, but he pulled back, his gaze distant and cold. What was happening to us?
I used to be able to talk to him about anything.
Now it felt like every word I said made things worse. Chad, I whispered. Please don't leave me. He shook his head slowly, his jaw tightening. I'm not leaving you, Jess, but I can't keep doing this. I can't keep pretending everything's okay when it's not. You're breaking me. I felt tears well up in my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Not here, not now. I couldn't let him see me break down. I had messed up so many times, and now I was finally seeing the weight of it. But deep down, I was still fighting it. I didn't know how to apologize enough to fix it. I'm sorry, I said, my voice shaky. I messed up, I know I did, but I don't know how to fix this. How do I fix this? Chad looked at me with a mix of frustration and sadness. You can't fix it in one day. You can't just say sorry and expect everything to be fine.
There's so much damage, Jess.
I've been there for you, and I've given everything I have to this family, to us. But I can't keep giving if you're not even trying to meet me halfway. I wanted to scream. I wanted to beg him to understand that I didn't mean to screw things up. But I knew he was right. I hadn't been trying. I hadn't been holding up my end of the deal. I kept making excuses, blaming everything but myself.
Chad, please.
I'll do anything. I'll change. I swear I will. I just need a chance, I said, the desperation creeping into my voice. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he looked down at his coffee cup like he was trying to figure out if what I was saying was worth believing. I could see the exhaustion in his eyes. He wasn't angry anymore. He was just tired. So tired of fighting for something that didn't feel like it was worth fighting for anymore. I don't know if I can believe you anymore, he finally said, his voice quiet but heavy. Every time I think you're going to change, you just do something else. It's like you're not even listening. I don't know what else to say. His words were like a punch to my chest. I wanted to scream, but all I could do was sit there, feeling like the worst version of myself. The woman I had become wasn't someone I even recognized anymore. And the truth was, I was terrified. I wanted to fix everything. I wanted to make it right. But I knew, deep down, that it wasn't just going to be fixed by a few words. It wasn't going to be enough to say I was sorry and expect everything to go back to normal. I know I've messed up, but I still love you, I said, trying to sound confident. But it was just a whisper of what it should have been. He sighed, his hand rubbing his face in frustration. I don't think you do, Jess. Not in the way that I need. Not in the way that's going to make any difference. Maybe it's time we stop pretending. Maybe it's time we face the fact that we're not the same people we were when we first got married. I couldn't look at him anymore. I felt like my world was falling apart. Everything I had taken for granted, the love, the stability, the family we built, was slipping away. And I couldn't do anything to stop it. I'm not perfect, Chad, I whispered, choking back a sob. I know I'm not. But please, don't walk away from me. His eyes softened for just a moment, but then the walls came back up. I can't keep doing this, Jess. I need someone who's going to stand by me, who's going to be there for me. I've given everything, and I'm empty. I don't have anything left to give. And just like that, I realized it was too late. He stood up from the table, and it felt like the ground beneath me cracked open. I'm sorry, he said softly, but I can't keep doing this. I'm done. He walked away, and in that moment I knew I had pushed him too far. I knew I had lost him, and I had nobody to blame but myself. The next few months were a blur. I tried to hold it together for the kids, but nothing felt the same. Chad moved out, and even though I knew I was the one who had caused all of this, I couldn't stop the guilt from eating me alive. There were times I felt like I was suffocating. I would lie awake at night, thinking about all the chances I had wasted, all the moments I had taken for granted. And then, one evening, I saw him again. It was brief, just a few words exchanged, but it was enough to make me realize the reality of it. He was done. He had moved on. And no amount of apologies, no amount of begging could bring him back. It was my fault. All of it. And now I was alone with the consequences of my actions. The regret, the pain, the loneliness. Everything I had tried to avoid came crashing down on me. I'll never forget that day. I'll never forget how I lost everything because I couldn't stop being selfish.